Welcome to episode 57 of our Road to Unicum. Today we look at the M4 Sherman with the Derp gun. This is, in my experience, the best tier-for-tier Derp tank in the game. Keep in mind I haven't played the KV2, but I think even looking at the mechanics, which I'll talk about in this video, I think this tank for its tier is simply superb. As you guys know, I've also previously reviewed the Panzer IV-H, which is another excellent Derp tank, but I think the M4 Sherman has several notable advantages, but let me talk about the pros of the Panzer IV-H first. First of all, that it has a faster reload compared to the M4 Sherman of about a second. It has a little bit snappier acceleration and slightly faster aim time. But those things said, the M4 Sherman enjoys several huge advantages. First of all, the top end speed is 48 kilometers per hour instead of 40, and the gun depression is a ridiculous 12 degrees instead of 10 for the Panzer IV-H. And in addition, the turret for the M4 Sherman is a smaller target and it's better protected. So not only do you have the better gun depression, but you can leverage that gun depression with the small, well-protected turret. And in this game, tanks that have really good gun depression as well as a strong turret tend to be much more forgiving in terms of playing, or allows you to use terrain that you otherwise might not use. And then last but not least, the M4 Sherman has 370 meters of view range, which is 20 more than the Panzer IV-H, which makes this tank a very effective spotter. I like going to this spot here over by D7 early in games because the slope to my left will provide some protection against arty and allows me to get early spots on their tanks as they cross the A and B lanes exposed. Like I nailed that T-28 as it was crossing the gap along the 6th lane. So I like positions like this, which give me that opportunity to do some early spotting and to have some working hard cover nearby. Now you have to be careful about crossing over here. I'm doing this because the 12T and I are both seeing the same thing, which is we can isolate and take out their Type 64 and their T-28. The T-28's already pretty beat up. He's a one-shot. And their Type 64 is the best tank on their team. As you guys know, I've reviewed that tank previously, and I think the Type 64 is the best tier-for-tier premium in the game, if you want to include premiums of every tier. Now obviously the Tier 8 premiums tend to be more popular to buy because they are the most efficient for grinding credits. Here I missed the shot on the Type 64, which is unfortunate, and then I know that 12T is unloading his clip, so I actually drive between me and that Type 64 to help encourage the Type 64 to shoot me, since I want to share my hit points with that 12T. It's not something that I'll always do, but just watching the 12T so far in this game, the fact that he's willing to push up here, I believe this is a person that, stranger that is worth sharing hit points with. We're already down 3 tanks. We lost 2 tanks even before the 12T and I made the push up to the A lane. And so, got to see what tanks we can try to take out here from range. One thing, which I'm trying to do is just staying on, keeping those tanks on the end of my white circle. Now, I'm flexing back to base. This is very intentional. Remember, if I push toward their base, I give their tanks that are sitting along the 1 and 2 lanes something to do. And a lot of times players will be very passive, almost like stationary turrets. So what I want to do instead is see if I can help put some damage on these tanks that are pushing toward our base, especially since they're getting close enough that pretty soon they're going to spot our arty. And once they spot our arties in base, this is going to be very hard to carry and come back from, just simply because so much of this map is open ground and it's not very arty safe. Now coming up to this ridge here along the F lane, if you're on the north side, can be a really powerful position. I've just spotted this EKV and then hit a nice shot. One really great thing about high explosive rounds is that they have such a good percentage of tracking opponents, and while that EKVTD is stationary, that's an easy kill. Now granted, most tanks don't have the high explosive mechanics to make it worthwhile to run. Generally speaking, you only run a Derp gun if it has meaningful, for example, DPM compared to a non-Derp gun, and if the Derp gun has sufficiently high caliber. So really, there are very few tanks in this game that actually benefit from running the Derp gun. Obviously the Panzer IV-H, the M4 Sherman, the KV2, the T-49, which is equally viable in my opinion, running both the 152 Derp gun as well as the 90mm AP gun, and then tanks such as the Japanese heavies. Now notice I've been trying to keep this KV-1S with the bushes in between us. Really, that's just a good habit or practice. It's very unlikely that that tank's going to be even able to physically spot me because of the distance, right? But, you know, it's a good habit to put soft cover between you and enemy tanks that you're firing on, just so, you know, that camo, if it's more than 15 meters away from you, you don't lose the value of it once you fire. Now, obviously, I've got to flex back here. This M5A1 is in a very good position to spot our remaining tanks, and they're already seeing me. They're firing on me. That was a terrible shot right there. I should have been leading him more and aiming ahead of him, but thankfully, you know, the M5A1 is trying to cross up a slope, which is slowing him down, and that gives me time to aim in. By the way, many of you have asked me to review the Chinese light tanks. I've actually worked my way up to tier 8 in that line, so that's going to be probably the next line that I'll look at. I've also got some footage of like the T100 LT and some other tanks I'd like to show to you. I will say, playing the Chinese light tank line, it's extremely unforgiving. You know, just as I said earlier in this video, that if you've got a strong turret and, you know, well-protected turret and gun depression, that those tanks are forgiving and relatively comfortable and easy to play. The reverse is also true. If you're playing a tank that has a soft turret and has poor gun depression, those are tanks that people tend to struggle in. And, you know, one thing that I've noticed, the Chinese light tank line is my 5th light tank line that I'm playing, so, you know, obviously I'm very well acquainted with light tank gameplay. And even here, I'm using that vision. Notice I'm intentionally staying behind this bush just to help prevent me from getting spotted, and then now I've got this paper TD spotted, and that's a one-shot. But I wanted to be careful as I'm moving up, because they've got 3 arty. Basically, as soon as I get spotted, I can expect to get dumped on, and that's not a good position to be in. This is that same KV-1S that I saw earlier that was like down along the H lane, which he was in open ground, which he shouldn't have been. I know that I've got him tracked, so I should just keep firing in case he's either burned his repair kit, or, you know, while it's on cooldown, or he just doesn't have one. And so that was a nice blind shot to finish him off. Our 12D's been doing some nice work. What's been good is that he's gone to a different area than I have. You know, he's played the south area of the map while I've been playing the F ridge, and because both of us, I've got max spotting, you know, in this tank. I'm actually running the food, the Coca-Cola, for that reason, is to push my view range out to, you know, over the max of 445 meters for spotting. And the vision you get in this tank is huge. Like, if I compare my stats between this and the Panzer IV-H, I had a better crew in the Panzer IV-H, but my win percentage in this tank is about almost 2% higher, and my damage contribution, so the damage plus the spotting, it's about 150 points higher, which is a lot for a tier 5 tank, right? So almost 100 points of damage per game higher in this tank compared to the Panzer IV-H, as well as about 50 extra spotting damage. And I'm spotting over half a tank more compared to the Panzer IV-H. So this tank, obviously it's not tremendously fast, but, you know, for tier 5, 48 kilometers per hour is pretty functional. And so I end up getting in this tank about, I think, 1.8 or 1.9 spots per game. So it's not obviously as high quality as having a light tank, but that 20 meters of extra view range is simply massive. So we're going to take a look at one more tier 6 battle. I actually had some tier 7 battles that I thought about showing you guys, because, you know, I've been really in the habit of showing battles in the bottom tier and how to deal with those situations. But this particular battle so well showcased the strengths of this tank in terms of its spotting capability, the gun depression, and its ability to just flat out deal damage because of the Derp gun. Now, obviously, the 1 second longer reload compared to the Panzer IV-H can limit your ability to take tanks out quickly, but I find that that 1 second reload, like, reload is only important to the extent that you're able to fire on reload. And, you know, a lot of times a reload can be negated due to hard cover, either you moving back behind a hard cover or your opponent doing so. And so, you know, I would, any day of the week, if I had to take 15 M4 Shermans versus 15 Panzer IV-H's, the Sherman team would wreck the Panzer IV-H team if I were playing both sides, simply because of the view range, the gun depression, the better protected turret. And you'll see the turret protection really come into play here. Now, a really good thing to do in this map is to play the 1-2 lanes, and I think I prefer the northeast spawn as opposed to the southwest spawn. The southwest spawn, you can kind of get caught out or stuck around the D lane, whereas on this side of the map, the northeast spawn, you can very easily get to the buildings around B1 and B2, which provide pretty good hard cover. And this is a second match where, there are 3 arties on both sides. And I'm doing this too because you guys have often asked about, not being top tier, being stuck with a lot of arties, and how to deal with situations like that. And really, you have to play the entire game until those arties are taken out. You have to play as if they're aiming at you very consistently and try to leverage hard cover to the extent possible or not get spotted. Okay, so the Chaffee and I are really the only ones that are kind of pushing up along here. I mean, the M5 Stewart is actually pretty aggressively pushing up to spot now. One of our top tier mediums, the Striv 74, is actually sitting too far back. Where he is, like around the C6, C7, is a logical spot if you were a tank destroyer and you want to support field, but I think as a medium tank it's kind of a waste, especially since he has a turret. Now I need to be careful about pushing too far forward here, and I just snapshot immediately. I don't want to take too long sitting out there, because that Type 58 is going to have a faster aiming gun than me, and once I've been spotted I got to be really careful and assume that those arties are going to be aiming my way. That's particularly true. There's one arty shot right there. To the extent that players are running XVM, and I've been on the North American server now that I do get some name recognition, and you can see the arties are totally dumping in field. And part of it's simply that they may not have anything else to shoot at right now. Tanks in city tend to be well protected, and well, actually our Panzer 4H is taking a suicidal line now that I'm looking at it. But I need to back up here a little bit and kind of figure out how best to approach this, because if I stay where I was behind those buildings, the second I peek out, their Type 58 is going to spot me, right? And so there's no opportunity to kind of try to vision snipe or camo snipe, whereas I can do that if I sit back a little bit, especially if I go up by those bushes. The real danger here, again, there's another snapshot. Notice the 6th Sense icon popped immediately after I fired, which really means I was spotted before I actually fired. But I want to take out this Leopard if I can. He's kind of sitting out in the open a bit. Like, if I were in his shoes, I would be... Well, he's got a really fast tank. First of all, if I were in his shoes, I was in that tank, I would have tried to make the A1 run, because he's got the most mobile tank. Like, the Leopard is very, very agile, and especially the Lukes too, and have really good top end speed. Okay, so these guys are finally crossing, which they should. They're just doing it a little bit late, and because they're crossing late, they're going to give me the opportunity here. That was a lucky snapshot, but I should take it, because it's going to take them long enough here that if I go ahead and push up to my left, I'll have the shot to my right, and then I managed to take out the Leopard. So that's a huge kill. Obviously taking out their light tank in field. They've still got a Covenanter somewhere else on the map, but I can't really worry about him. He's on the other side of the map, and then because the Type 58 just fired, I go ahead and pop out a little bit. Now that shot missed, but you got to be careful with derp guns as far as exposure. It's too late for me to kind of sit out and aim, and you'll see times later where I'm going to take my time and aim in on him. But for now, until I get a better shot, like right here, this is a really good shot. That right there, only a small portion of the hull of my tank and my small turret were exposed, whereas most of that Type 58 is exposed. So I always talk about that asymmetrical, if like aiming or viewing, compare you to the other tank. He's overexposed and I'm underexposed where I am. The main thing I need to be careful is just not get hit by arty. Alright, and looking in the map here, you can see how far I'm pinging the map right now. Like, unfortunately, our arty should have backed up based on the location of their Lago and the Covenanter, right? But at this point, if I don't go back and help our base, we are 100% going to lose. Even if we kill their Lago and the Covenanter, their tanks are now pushing very strong out of the A lane, the 0 lane rather, and so just out of necessity, I have to come back and help. Now, thankfully, one of our arty's shotguns, the Lago, so the Covenanter is the only tank that's close nearby, and then our Chaffee gets taken out, which is really unfortunate. So now we have no one behind me, and we are down a very steep deficit now. So it looks like they've got 7 tanks left to our 3, and we don't really have any kind of map control. The only thing that's going to help us right now is that our Striv 74, who was camping for a very long time, is at pretty high hit points. So what I need to do, we need to win something, right? And I don't necessarily want to sit and fight the Type 59, primarily because anywhere where I could stop and fire the Type 59, I'm going to be spottable by arty, and their tanks coming along the 9-0 lanes are also pretty beat up, and I want to support the Striv 74 for as long as he's going to be alive. So up to this point, I haven't necessarily done all that much damage, only like 500 damage, right? But basically, I was taking what I could reasonably and safely take in terms of the damage out in field, in terms of taking out the Leopard, and then that was a money shot right there. That's pretty lucky on the ARL 44. But, you know, as Wayne Gretzky always said, you miss 100% of the shots you don't take. So I might as well take those low percentage shots because the arrow 44 is not going to peek his head out. Notice I've had to be pushing east this whole time because it was only a matter of time until that Type 58 came up that hill and comes up behind me. So if I had been too late in pushing toward the east, the Type 58 would have rear shots on me. Now, what's very difficult is the fact that there's still 2 arties left. Now, I am running low on this ridge here, and yeah, this is, you know, looking at us an asymmetrical difference in terms of exposure. You know, I can choose when we are going to see each other, but the reverse is not true. He does get one shot here that penetrates me, but I put a second high explosive shell. Now I need to be careful about sitting too stationary in this spot for too long because I know that their 2 arties are going to be, you know, trying to get into right there. You just heard an arty fire. They're going to be trying to get in a position where they can fire on me. And then right there, notice like I just blocked some damage from the Type 58. So that, you know, the M4 Sherman's turret is not iron-proof, right? But it's good enough that you'll bounce some damage, and that's really all you need. Just some, you know, damage avoidance or mitigation, whichever term you want to use here, is a damage avoidance, being able to block damage with the turrets. And then there are 2 shots by their arties, so I need to relocate. I don't need to be concerned about capping. If I really need to, I can come up and cap. As a matter of fact, he's stepping off of it. It's so funny. Someone on my team in the chat's asking, where am I going? He's like, where am I going is trying to stay alive and get in a position where their arties are going to have to re-aim at me. Notice I didn't stop there to fire at the Type 58. I need to be worried about my exposure more than anything else, right? And now, again, I am dictating when we see each other, so I can work this off of my reload. Type 58 does nail me, but that's okay. Remember, I blocked that one shell earlier, and because of it, I'm still alive, and I need to scramble a little bit. And this is where having that 48 kilometers of speed is pretty helpful. You know, they've fired multiple times now, just since that little exchange that I had with the Type 58, and missed. So now there's another arty fire. So both arties have fired relatively recently, or it could have been one of them firing twice. I can't remember the exact reloads. The lower tiers, the arties have a much more obnoxious reload rate compared to the, you know, the upper tiers. I'm actually not sure which is more annoying. Is the, you know, the upper tier arties, which have a higher, you know, alpha damage, you know, or the lower tier arties, which tend to fire more often. It's probably more disruptive to be facing tanks that are firing more often. All right, well, I've got one of their arties spotted, and again, a huge advantage as far as spotting because I have those 370 meters of view range. And what I'm thinking right now, I don't want to get too close to him so that we spot each other. Ideally, I would want to go in a position where I could sit behind a bush or go somewhere like along this ridge where I could peek over and get the first shot advantage and then duck behind hard cover. A lot of people would just run straight west and go after that arty, but I'm putting my hands in RNG. So this right here is what I was getting in position to be able to fire on that AMX 105 if he steps up, but I spot the M44. And so if he crosses over to the 9 lane here into this open road, I'll be able to get a kill shot. I mean, he stops, and then this shot hits and tracks. No, it doesn't track the M44, but you know, he knows, generally speaking, where I am based on the direction fire on the map. And so what I don't want to have happen is get sandwiched between the 2 arties. You saw the absolutely mindless mistake that I made in the last video with the T-54 Mod 1, where I was going after one arty and put myself in the line of fire another. I don't want to repeat that mistake here, so I'm going to go ahead and rush this M44. And you know, remember that arty has really horrible gun handling and is much slower in terms of, you know, driving his tank. So you know, the M4 Sherman you wouldn't call agile, but it's certainly a lot more agile than this arty, and he's in a tough position since I got behind him, and then I can finish him off there. The main thing now is they're already just fired and missed, and I need to sit behind this building a little bit. You know, I'm guessing their arty's probably somewhere along the 7-8 lanes by now. So I'm just sitting in this building a bit to drop from his vision, from his rendering. And then now when I push out, I want to just make sure, okay, they're already just blind fired again. So I can come out safely now. I'm going to make a bit of a mistake here in hindsight when I watch this video. You know, there is the chance that they're already, and I probably shouldn't have knocked over that tree. If he's in overhead view, he can see that. It's like one of those subtle things, but these little things, you know, opponents who have good awareness will pick up on, and that could mean the difference between winning or losing a battle. Now, what I'm trying to do is get beneath and underneath him. I was actually expecting him to be around somewhere on the 7-8, but he's actually, you know, over by the 9 lane. Now, if I were more patient, and what I should have done, because there's still 4 minutes left in this match, plenty of time, I probably should have driven all the way to the A lane and then come up where that bush line is, like around A7 or where those buildings are. And by doing that, if there already moves toward our cap, I'm guaranteed the first shot advantage. Now, I do need to be somewhat conscious of time because, if they're already just sits there, we could chew up clock, which isn't good because I don't want to necessarily, you have to play with the clock in mind. You don't want to rush when you've got time. You want to take your time, but you don't want to take so much time. And I've lost battles because of this, because I just didn't have a high enough sense of urgency. But what I want to avoid at all costs is getting spotted from a distance where he can pre-aim at me as I'm driving in, and that's actually exactly what's going to happen here. I was thinking that their AMX might have moved a little bit toward the 0 lane, but as it turns out, once I come up and crest over this ridge, that's not the case. And so what happens here is a bad scenario for me. He's actually a little bit to my left, and even though there's the bush there, I'm close enough that he's able to spot me, and that's a bad situation because given how low my hit points are, even if he just splashes me, there's a pretty good chance that he's going to kill me. So I'm driving up, and I'm trying not to stop too much, but just get enough of my aiming reticle in that I can take the snapshot. I don't want to take my time too much there because, like I said, that already could shotgun me, and it'd be a shame to lose a game after coming back like that. So the M4 Sherman, if you want to get used to the derp style of gameplay, I really didn't play any derps in this game until I played the T49, so that was a bit of a shock in terms of the mechanics, but this is a super fun tank to play. Like I said, I way performed better in this compared to the Panzer IV-H, and I even think for North America, I'm like in the top 10 players with over 150 battles with the M4 Sherman, and I did that with, frankly, a very mediocre crew. So I hope you enjoyed this video, and we'll be looking at the Chinese light tank line next. Take care.